Thanks for joining us for session 3 of the ACLU Advocacy Academy. My name is Jana Farley. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the communications director for the ACLU of South Dakota. I'm incredibly excited to be presenting this session on the art of storytelling. Ever since I was a kid, I've loved telling stories. Stories, whether I was talking about what happened at recess or what we did in class that day, were interesting and fun. At least I thought so. And I loved having people listen to what I had to say. Fast forward a few years, okay, more than a few years. As an adult, I still love telling stories. It's what I did for years as a journalist and what I do now at the ACLU. But these days, I'm not just entertaining people. Stories have the power to persuade and to move people to action. Our favorite neighbor is right. There isn't anyone you couldn't learn to love once you've heard their story. Stories are universal tools to persuade, and because of this, stories are excellent tools in an advocate's toolbox. Data and statistics are everywhere, and numbers are important, but stories matter now more than ever. The human brain is wired for stories. Stories create patterns which we understand. They help us survive. They allow for prediction and action. Stories aren't just entertaining. They're essential. They help shape public perception and opinion. In fact, stories are up to 22 times more memorable than facts alone. Telling a story that conveys why you are invested in an issue can sway people's support. Stories are easily understandable. They make us laugh. They make us cry. When's the last time numbers made you do that? Well, except in the case of high school algebra. But I'm a writer. I just don't do numbers. And stories can inspire people to take action. They can change the way we think and act. This is because we're emotional creatures as well as rational ones. That's what makes stories so powerful. And it's why we're here tonight. But I don't think I need to sell you on the idea of storytelling. Let's get into the real meat of our discussion to uncover how to best tell our stories as an advocate for the issues you care about most. In this session, we're going to talk about the framework for telling compelling stories, discuss the importance of self-care in sharing difficult and personal stories, reflect on and develop your personal stories, and talk a little bit about sharing your stories publicly with legislators or other elected officials, on social media, or with the media, TV or print journalists. We know that stories are compelling and that people like them, but how can stories help change the world? Why is sharing our stories an important part of advocacy? Jean-Luc Godard was right. Real life can be pretty complex. Stories help us break it down and see things from other perspectives. Public narrative is a practice of leadership. Leadership is about accepting responsibility for enabling others to achieve shared purpose in the face of uncertainty. In this case, moving those around you to action. A lot of times, this can be particularly valuable during legislative session when you want people to contact legislators, equipping elected officials with our stories to tell process stories, and persuading legislators to vote a certain way on legislation. But outside of session, it's valuable too. Narrative is how we learn to make choices and construct our identities and purpose as individuals, as communities, as organizations. When we create a public narrative of ourselves and of our community, we are better able to ask others to follow us by helping folks to understand our intentions and why we are called to action and leadership. Before we get into the core components of telling your personal story, I want to dive briefly into self-care. Share only what makes you feel comfortable. Certain parts of your personal story may be too painful to talk about, or some aspects may make you feel uncomfortable. These portions can and should be off limits. You should share what makes you comfortable at a time when you are ready. You can support the movement around the issue you care about most without draining yourself. Take care of yourself first and share only what you feel comfortable with. You control how much of your story you share and what you want to talk about. Will sharing your story publicly put you or anyone else at risk of harm? Is there anyone from your past who may be looking for you that you do not want to find, who you do not want to find you? Will you be revealing information about actions by you or others that could be considered criminal and that are not previously known to law enforcement or prosecutors? If you are not a U.S. citizen, have you considered the risk of sharing your story publicly to your immigration status? Do you have a trusted person you can turn to if you need to talk through your feelings before or after sharing your story? You can decide in what way you share your story. Options may include a written account, a media interview, appearing in a video, or testifying in person in front of legislators, among other possibilities. Now back to storytelling as an advocacy tactic. Storytelling is both an art and a science. Stories reflect and evoke core values and widely held beliefs. Storytelling has become the norm for mass media and legislators. Reporters say, I need to put a face on this facts for my audience. Legislators need to put a face on a story to their debate or social media posts to justify a vote and move people in their district to understand their decisions. This is about communicating around core values, and often where the biggest conflict in storytelling occurs. The truth is that people make decisions based on their emotions and values, and people are motivated to take action when they feel their personal story is connected to other people's personal stories. People get involved and stay involved when they feel like they are building a community that reflects their values. Values and emotions drive our decision-making, and community building is what motivates people to get involved over the long term. And that's because we don't think our values, we feel our values. Often we don't realize what we value in the world until we hear a story or witness an injustice that stirs emotions within us. Emotions inform us of what we value in ourselves, in others, and in the world, and they enable us to express the motivational content of our values to others. Policy matters, but values are foundational. Values come first. The reason we prefer some policies to other policies is because the world that they would make is a world that reflects our values. Telling our stories is a really impactful way for us to connect with people over our shared values. When we connect our values to our personal experiences, it helps people make the connection between abstract values and policy. So when we talk about the challenges that we have faced or talk about the events in our lives that have shaped our values, we aim to build a personal connection with voters or other people. When legislators hear our stories, we hope they become emotionally invested in us and they come to care about the issues we care about. Regardless of persuasion, sharing our personal experience also helps make the connection between policy and lived experience. If we can talk about how a policy or program impacts our family, it makes the stakes of the policy very clear. Okay. I want to tell my story. What do I do next? Well, Keith Richards is right. Everybody's got a different way of telling a story. I mean, are you really going to argue with a Rolling Stone? I don't think so. Now, while there is no wrong way to tell your story, there are some things to remember. So let's begin by thinking about our own personal experiences. What's at stake for you or your loved ones? What challenges have you faced? What challenges are you currently facing? What events have shaped you and motivated you to take action? Then it's about connecting your personal experience to shared values. What have you learned about your experiences and how has that shaped your values? And then it's about making connections, connecting your values and experiences to your position on the issue. making sure your listener understands how your values are similar to theirs, and then making your specific ask. Join me in this fight, donate money to this cause, vote on a particular piece of legislation, whatever it may be. Making that connection with your listeners is one of the most important parts of a story. When we share our personal stories with others in forums, interpersonal conversation, on social media, and they see the connection between our stories and their own stories, we help them feel like they are part of a community. It's really important that we can connect our own personal stories to the stories of others. We need to have a story of self as well as a story of us, and then connect that story to a time and a place, the story of now. Now, this slide is just another way of looking at how to structure your story, framing it as a challenge, the choice, and then the outcome. Sometimes people see the word challenge and think it means describing the worst misfortunes of our lives. Sometimes these moments are absolutely the moments that most shaped us, but keeping in mind that a struggle might be one of your own choosing. Many things have been a challenge to you and can be a source of a good story to inspire others. As you're telling your story, there are some important things to remember. Stories should be specific and require context. You can have more than one version of your story. Just make it relevant to the issue you are advocating around. Don't be abstract. Tell the story, not about the story. You don't have to give your resume or your entire life story. And you are not obligated to tell stories you are not ready to tell simply because they're relevant. Now, of course, it's time to share your story. And I understand that can be a little nerve-wracking, especially if you're a private person. Now, first off, it's normal to be nervous. I mean, if Taylor Swift, someone who gets paid to perform, gets nervous about everything, it's perfectly natural that you will too. So that's why it's important to take a little time to prepare yourself. Whether you're sharing your story with a small group or an organization, on a video you'll share on social media, with legislators or other elected officials, or with the media, first off, take a minute to breathe. Just breathe. Then reframe the situation as an opportunity. Remember that this is something that's going to contribute to the big picture. And most of all, take some time to prepare your messages. Now, when it comes to telling your story, you don't have to be perfectly polished. It's more about the message. You want to be real. You don't want to be a robot telling a story, but you don't want to be unprepared either. So positive thinking is key. Turn that nervous energy you have building up inside you to enthusiasm. And remember that your audience wants you to succeed too. Then rehearse a bit in front of the mirror or while you're in the shower. Maybe practice what you're going to say about 3 times, but you don't have to memorize it. Just know what you're going to say. And then remember, it's okay to have boundaries. You might get questions and you don't have to answer questions that aren't about the message or are off message from what you're trying to deliver. And because again, you can't take back words once you've said them. But the most important thing to remember is to think of telling a story as a conversation, whether your audience is just 1 or 2 people, or if you're talking to a whole crowd of people, you're just talking to a friend. And then, use complete sentences. If you're talking to a reporter, it makes it easier when they'll be using a direct quote or pulling a soundbite. If the question, for instance, is, how was dinner? Your answer should be something like, dinner was great. I enjoyed the food and the company, instead of it was good. And then, you don't have to use big words. Just speak like an average person, kind of break it down to like a 7th grade level. And then I know that no one likes pauses in conversation. We are all naturally inclined to fill that space and to keep rambling, but don't. If you're telling a story in a casual one-on-one or a small group setting, and there's some back and forth question and answers going on, embrace the pause. That's where you can breathe. It's okay. And that pause is not as long as you think. The same goes for a media interview. The pause between your answer and the next question from the reporter is not as long as you think. And then if you don't know something, it's okay to say you don't know. You can always offer to find the answer later. Like, for instance, statistics. Not everybody remembers specific statistics. So you can go back and give that information to someone at a later time. So what happens when someone asks you a question that you don't know the answer to? Well, again, like I said, you don't have to answer it, but don't make up an answer. You don't want to be putting false information out into the world. And then don't say no comment. Instead, you can respond with something like, well, that is a great question. Let me talk with my allies, fellow advocates in the coalition about that question and get back to you. Then there's also a technique you can use that we call the block and the bridge technique. This technique helps you take the discussion from unfriendly to friendly. It's smooth and it totally works. So it's the idea of, like, if someone asks you a question you don't know, you can say, thank you for bringing that up. However, it's also important to emphasize the important points that I want to make. Insert those here. Or you can say something like, that's not my area of expertise, but I can tell you something I know a lot about, what you really want to discuss. And then if someone gets off topic, just pivot. That's where you can use phrases like, one of the reasons that I'm here today is, and then talk about what you want to talk about. Or one of the reasons I wanted to speak to you was, insert your specific points here. It takes a little practice, but like I said, it really does work. Which now that brings us to the end of our session on storytelling. And final thoughts? I have just one. Those who tell the stories rule the world. Plato said that. At least that was according to the internet. But the internet also attributes this quote to about a dozen other people too. But you can't argue with Plato, so I'm going to give him the credit for this quote. But it really doesn't matter who said it. It's the sentiment that counts, right? Your story can really change the world, and I hope you tell it. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Have a great evening.